Oh god, this video is gonna be a long one, isn't it? In the previous episode, I talked about God of War 3. All things considered, it was a pretty satisfying conclusion. After a grand finale like that, you really need a good reason to continue the story afterward. And it wasn't easy to do so, but somehow Sony Santa Monica managed to make a game that wasn't just a worthy continuation to the Greek saga, but an incredible soft reboot that brought new life into the series. At this point, this is all essentially common knowledge, but this game basically went over budget and stuff behind the scenes wasn't looking too good for the project. But against all odds, this game went above and beyond. It was met with applause in one of the most iconic moments in E3 history. Remember when that was a thing? I miss E3. It was a massive hit with longtime fans, new players, and critics alike. It needs no further introduction, with it winning the title of Game of the Year 2018. So without further delay, here's the modern day classic, simply known as God of War. Before we start, let's talk behind the scenes. I'm not gonna go too into detail because Sony released an hour-long documentary about the game's development, so if you guys want to watch that, I left it in the description. To briefly summarize, after God of War Ascension, the franchise really needed to change, with the general consensus being that Ascension was where the Greek formula really started to grow stale. Sony Santa Monica needed something fresh. There were originally plans to put Kratos in Egypt, with some remnants of that being present in the final game. But as we know, the final game puts Kratos in a Scandinavian setting with Norse mythology. In the Greek saga, Kratos was voiced by the legendary Terence C. Carson, but since he was too short for the motion capture, Kratos is now portrayed by the equally legendary Christopher Judge. Unfortunately, poor communication between Terence Carson and the studio led to some bad blood between the two.
That's all. I mean, as an actor, you lose jobs all the time. You are done with jobs all the time. But when somebody lets you go, it's a respect thing for me. Just come and talk to me and say, hey, thank you for your service, but we're going with in a different direction. Never got any call like that.
But, I mean, it all worked out in the end, I guess. Christopher Judge has phenomenal chemistry with Sonny Soljic, the actor for Atreus. And while I'm confident that Terence C. Carson could pull off performing this version of Kratos, Christopher Judge is just irreplaceable. I mean, so is Terence C. Carson, but they replaced him, so, Now, I forgot to mention this in the previous video, but at this point, Cory Balrog is now basically the series' main director, and David Jaffe is officially out. Anybody else notice that the series got better and better the less involved Jaffe was? That's kind of funny. Now, we're not gonna delay it any further. We're gonna go straight into reviewing God of War 2018. Now, normally a God of War game starts off with an action-packed, barbaric, explosive opening to set the tone. But here, God of War 4 sets the tone perfectly with a drastically different opening. Instead of a fight against the Hydra or the Colossus of Rhodes or even the second war between the Titans and gods, we get this. A peaceful shot in the woods with Kratos staring at a tree with his Leviathan axe in his hands. Also, yes, I know how to pronounce it. You can shut up about how I pronounced it in the Astrobot video. You're not cool or funny if you point it out. After chopping down the tree, we see his arms are covered with bandages to hide the scars inflicted on him by his blades of chaos. As he tightens them, we can see how ashamed of his past actions he is. Another thing great about the game is that it works not just as an introduction to the series, but it's still a great story for veterans as well. I say this because afterwards we're introduced to Atreus, Kratos' new son. Side note, I never actually called him Atreus throughout my original playthrough, so throughout this review I'll just be referring to him by his iconic nickname, Boy.
Boy, 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 boy.
See, throughout the game, Kratos and Boy go on this adventure together, and it's a great experience for the both of them. While I'm not really a fan of the old grumpy man and takes care of little kid narrative, it's actually done really well here. If you're a new player, Boy serves as a great audience surrogate because you'll most likely want to know what Kratos' backstory is as much as he does. And if you're a veteran, you'll most likely put yourself in Kratos' shoes, with Boy being curious about your origins and more characters going, "I know what you did," or "I know who you are" throughout the game. After riding back home on a boat, we see the reason why Kratos and Boy were collecting wood in the woods. It's because Kratos' new wife, Faye, has died, so he and Boy are giving her a funeral. Her final wish was for her ashes to be scattered across the highest mountain, so in order to test Boy, Kratos tells him to hunt deer. Now, we've had some new things to talk about in God of War 3, but here they completely reworked how everything works, so let's start with the gameplay. Unlike the Greek games, which were mostly linear, God of War 4 introduces some RPG elements like an open world to traverse. There's plenty of stuff to be found out in Midgard, like health upgrades, hack silver, special chests, Odin's ravens, special attacks used in combat, etc. The ways of traversal are worth praising too. For one, tasks that used to require button mashing, like Kratos opening a door or opening a chest, are now activated with just a single button press, and I really like that. It makes the gameplay have better flow to it. Well, that and the addition of a run button. Back when I first played this game, I thought it was a little weird that they removed the jump button, but I grew accustomed to it. The circle button is pretty much just an action button now. You can do things like open doors and chests, pick up items, and jumping can be done with circle too, just in context-sensitive areas. There's more to talk about, like traveling to other realms and the boat sections, but I'll wait until a little later to actually discuss them. But now I can safely say that the reworked traversal system is a much-needed breath of fresh air, and all the changes made were for the better. And it helps that the art direction still goes hard. You all know I praised how the Greek games looked and felt, and I think this game feels just as good, but in a different way. They really let you take in these beautiful environments, with each realm having its own tone. Back then, I used to think this was the best looking PS4 game, and even if it was dethroned by Uncharted 4 when I played that, God of War still looks really good. Anyway, after Kratos fails to confront Boy when their hunting trip is finished, they get ambushed by Shrek and we partake in the combat tutorial. Much like the Greek games, combat has you swinging your weapon around at enemies, dodging, and occasionally performing finisher moves. However, this game presents a massive retooling of the combat system. It's much more close ranged now, with a lot more emphasis on parrying, dodging, and overall strategy compared to the predecessors. New moves added are the quick turn with an indicator behind you if there's an incoming enemy attack, aiming and throwing your axe, which is both useful in combat and puzzles, pressing square to have Boy shoot an arrow, and the runic attacks. Runic attacks are essentially special moves Kratos can do with his axe, with light attacks being quicker and less damage inflicting, and heavy ones being slower but giving out a ton of damage. You can find new runic attacks out in the overworld, with all of them having pretty impressive and distinct choreography. You can also level them up in the brand new skill tree using XP gained by defeating hordes of enemies. Leveling them up does things like making them inflict more damage or more button prompts to expand on them further. In addition to runic attacks, you can equip a special talisman to cast a helpful spell like temporary invincibility or a small health boost. As much as I'm biased towards the Greek games, I have to admit that the combat here is extremely solid. I'm not sure if I'd call it better, but it definitely has a lot more depth and techniques than ever before. Even on the highest difficulty, the combat is still a lot of fun. The enemy variety is worth pointing out too. Back in Greece, we fought Gorgons, Cyclopes, and a bunch of other monsters in Greek myths, but here we're fighting Draugr, trolls, rock monsters, and we'll get to them later. I also like how some enemies are ice themed so they won't be phased by the axe, and the same applies to fire enemies when we get another weapon later. Back to the story, Boy gets a little too wrathful, stabbing the shit out of Shrek's corpse, so Kratos stops him, deciding he's not ready. This here is one of the first signs that Kratos sees a little bit of his past self in his son, which is something he does not like at all. Rage and vengeance completely ruined Kratos' life, so when he found a new one in a faraway land, he didn't want his son to be put in the same path. Kratos is well aware that everything he touches gets fucking obliterated, so it's a neat detail that he chose to distance himself from Boy in an attempt to protect him. This is such a great conflict for Kratos, and it's really satisfying to see how the two of them grow closer over the course of the adventure. But for now, they head back home before they get visited from a stranger. And not just any stranger, the stranger, that's what they call him before they reveal his name.
I know who you are.
What's going on? Do you know him?
More importantly, I know what you are.
I thought you'd be bigger. But you're definitely the one. Long way from home, aren't you?
This is Baldur. The way he speaks to Kratos, it seems like he knows about his past actions. Later on, we find out that he was talking about something completely unrelated, but the scene still has a great amount of tension to it. The writing and performances really do make this scene. What happens is that Baldur tries to provoke Kratos while Kratos is trying to tell him in a calm manner to fuck off.
Leave my home.
You are going to have to kill me for that to happen.
When Baldur goes too far, we take part in a boss battle, and to Kratos' surprise, Baldur is invincible. This fight is leagues better than the troll boss, with this one focusing more on close-range combat like parrying Baldur's fast attacks. There's also plenty of impressive cinematics and tense moments like, come on, look at this.
Tell me what I want. Pain stops real simple.
Why are there two beds in here?
Eventually, we see a red meter appear on the HUD, that being the returning Spartan Rage ability. Much like the Greek games, everything's drenched in a red hue while Kratos goes berserk, rolling out rapid-fire punches until the meter runs out. After Kratos gets the better of Baldur by snapping his neck, there really was no choice. Kratos and his son had to start their journey to the mountains, whether the boy was ready or not. On their way to the mountains, Kratos and Boy have a well-designed open world to traverse through. As I mentioned before, throwing the axe is helpful when puzzle solving, where you sometimes have to hold bridges down by throwing the axe at specific targets. Some chests require you to destroy 3 targets in order to open them, so you can earn stuff like health or rage upgrades. Speaking of upgrades, we meet some new allies that occasionally show up to serve as a way to buy new armor or upgrade your things. Say hello to Brock and Sindri, 2 dwarf brothers with contrasting personalities and a strained relationship. We first meet up with Brock, the raunchy, grumpy blue one.
You gotta handle her special, or she'll wreck beyond fixing. I can enhance her for you right now if it so pleases you, son of a bitch.
What is wrong with you? Why are you blue?
And we later meet up with Sindri, the nervous, calculating germaphobe.
Father, can I tell him?
No.
Tell me what? Did you put this wheel in your mouth? Oh God, I'll vomit. I'm not kidding, I'll throw up on it.
It is nothing. A family matter.
Oh.
The Leviathan axe was crafted by these two, which makes Kratos agree to have it upgraded occasionally, and Brock and Sindri really are just funny characters. Personally, I think Sindri is a little better, but I like their dynamic and their eventual resolution, and they're probably the first people Kratos met that he didn't want to fucking murder. Another new character we meet is Freya, the kind-hearted yet snarky witch of the woods. After Boy successfully hunts down a wild boar, we meet Freya, who doesn't appreciate that they shot the boar for target practice. We need to get to her house to completely heal the boar so we can have a change of scenery in the Sanctuary Grove. The beautiful, vibrant spring colors are a nice contrast to the bitter winter woods back there. I also love how Freya's house looks. It's underneath a giant tortoise with a tree growing on its shell. Freya also seems to know of Kratos being a god. Actually, let's pause for a second. Something that's been bothering me in this game is that they call Kratos a god when in actuality he's just a demigod. His dad was an Olympian and his mom was just a regular human. I don't know why they call Kratos a god here. Is it just for simplicity's sake? Whatever the case, this isn't really a huge issue, but it just kind of bothers me a little. Okay, anyway, Freya seems to display some motherly attributes concerned that Boy isn't aware of his true powers. I wonder if Freya acting motherly is gonna come into play later. Probably not.
I also need lamb's cress. Do you mind? It's a white petal flower in my garden. Just a handful.
Fine. Lamb's cress.
I'm sorry. Every time I see that scene, I'm just reminded of this iconic blooper right here.
Fine. Lamb's cress. I'm a fucking god of war.
That's amazing. I hope you guys keep that in there.
Once the fucking god of war and boy are outside, they debate on if they can really trust Freya. I forgot to mention this earlier, but Faye's knife is a nice way of showing how much she meant to Kratos, with Kratos being a little miffed when boy is careless with it.
Would this help?
I dropped it?
When you were chasing the animal.
What's wrong with me? If I lost it, then...
You did lose it.
I'll take better care of it from now on.
After we get the materials needed for the spell, Freya heals the boar and grants us an objective marker on our compass, and we enter an underground passage to continue the journey. Here's where we're put on a boat rowing all the way to the Lake of Nine, the location of Tyr's temple. It was built by all the different races before peace was put to an end, according to Freya. After throwing the axe into the water, we awaken the world's serpent, who's thankfully friendly. Can you imagine if we had to fight this thing? I mean, it wouldn't be that far-fetched since the last game had us fighting Kronos. The serpent rising made all the fog disappear while changing the tide, allowing the area to be more visible. The Lake of Nine is where we'll be spending a good chunk of our playthrough in, with Tyr's temple acting as a gateway to other realms, while the shores offer us some bonus challenges and side quests. It's really enjoyable rowing from shore to shore, listening to some extra dialogue that flesh out Kratos and Boy's relationship, as well as some extra world building.
There was one that concerned a hare and a tortoise.
Like the witch's house?
Unlikely.
So what happens?
They wager on a race between them. The hare is too confident of victory and foolish, while the tortoise is steady and disciplined. The tortoise wins.
You haven't told a lot of stories, have you?
The side quests are neat too, ranging from helping put the souls of the dead at peace, extra realm challenges, and...
Enough! I will decide the best course of action.
Oh god, no! Yeah, so after obtaining a magic chisel, we can enter a secret chamber with a Valkyrie in it, and it acts as an optional boss fight, and beating all 9 of them completes a side quest. And these bosses are fucking hard. They require every skill in the game, like locking onto targets, parrying, dodging, and overall just unloading every attack or charm at your disposal. Failure to parry attacks will result in death.
Well, what's that fine mess?
I had some trouble fighting the first Valkyrie, and they only got harder from there. I spent an hour fighting this fucking thing, and I just keep dying and dying and dying. I'm fucking with you all. It only took me 10 minutes. Really, they're not that hard when you get the pattern down. Their attacks will get quicker the more Valkyries we fight, but really they're just challenging and fun side bosses to try if you're looking for more shit to do. But no matter the side quest, you can bet your ass that Boy will be eager to help anyone in need, and Kratos would rather not waste time with stuff like this. It's also worth noting that most of the side quests have to do with themes of revenge and parenthood. It keeps the themes of the game consistent, which is pretty neat. Man, I sure hope Boy doesn't break the laws of physics again. After going inside, Brock gives us a rock that allows us to take a shortcut between the realm gateways, which we can use later. When we get closer to the mountain, the path is blocked by a dark wall of smoke nicknamed the Black Breath by Freya. Oh, she's back, by the way. She tells them in order to clear the Black Breath, they have to travel to Alfheim to get the light of the Bifrost, with her guiding us to the realm gateway but staying in Midgard. She says she can't travel outside of Midgard since Odin doesn't like her very much, suggesting they have a history. Before we get to Alfheim, we get some more world building while we rotate the bridge to point at the correct gateway, and we eventually make it to Alfheim, a pink, otherworldly, almost Garden of Eden type biome. If I were to complain a little bit, I don't think this realm is the best looking. I get what they were going for, I really do, but this realm is just kind of ugly compared to Midgard, especially when we go inside and it gets a little too pink. I mean, but hey, hey, at least it looks better when we get the Bifrost light. Alfheim has more puzzles and enemy variety, like ancient rock beings that only have one weak point, flying elves, pink fleshy roots we have to destroy in a row with the axe, and new light arrows we can use to make new bridges of light spawn. While I'm not a fan of Alfheim visually, at least most of the time, it introduces some clever mechanics to play around with. Story-wise, before we break into the hive to restore the temple, we see that Boy is getting voices in his head, with him telling us it goes back to our first encounter with Brock, where Boy felt that Brock's animal said something. This is more foreshadowing for his powers and an impending arc in the sequel, I think. I haven't played it yet. It's the only one that I haven't played. Anyway, once we make it to the Bifrost, Kratos gives Boy his axe before entering. He may not show it, but Kratos is starting to put a little more trust in Boy, with Boy getting more skilled and experienced as the journey continues. But when Kratos enters the light, he enters an ethereal dimension where Boy's voice can be heard complaining. This scene is left a little up to interpretation, because we don't know if this is actually him talking or if it's Kratos' insecurities as a father manifesting itself as his son's voice.
He doesn't talk to me, doesn't teach me. It should have been him. Do you hear me? Him, not you. Except, I don't mean that. You know I love him. I just wish he was better. I know he can be. So if he tries, I'll try.
Suddenly, Boy pulls Kratos out of the light, and we see that a lot of time passed since Kratos entered, which leaves him flabbergasted since it only felt like a few seconds to him. But when he returns to reality, he's surrounded by enemy corpses. It would have been funny if we saw Boy fend himself against all the elves, but what can you do? Continuing the journey, we go back into the previous area to make our way out, and since we have the light arrows now, we can open pathways that were previously sealed off.
You gonna carry that everywhere?
I just might.
One heated boat ride and realm travel later, we finally clear the Black Breath and make our way into the mountain. The mountain interior is a dark cave with the light of the Bifrost serving as a flashlight, as well as crystals we can use our light arrows on. As we solve a couple puzzles to repair the elevator to the summit, we occasionally get ambushed by enemies, and even Shrek comes back for revenge. We even get ambushed while on the elevator, but it's still just Draugr. It's not like anything else is gonna come up to attack us.
We're almost at the summit. Nothing's gonna stop us.
Calm yourself, boy, but stay behind me.
Oh. Well, hello. Suddenly we get ambushed by a dragon, and we have to use some explosive sap we found earlier to defeat him when he uses lightning breath. As much as I enjoyed fights with Baldur, I gotta say the dragon is the best boss so far. It's fairly simple compared to the former, but it's fucking cool. What else can I say? Look at this. This is probably the most Greek feeling part in the game. I mean, at least so far. Oh my god, they probably know what you're talking about. This is like the 4th time you've hyped it up. You know, you must be really fun at parties.
Can you kill something that big?
He doesn't know. Anyway, as a gesture of gratitude for saving his life, Sindri gives us mistletoe arrows and electric arrows we can use to blow up red sap in the way, as well as electrocute enemies during combat. Oh, speaking of, by now we have a few magic animal summons Boy can use to lend more of a hand in combat, like ravens, deer, etc. Boy is integrated into the gameplay pretty well now that I think about it. Once we make it to the summit, we overhear Baldur talking to the smartest man alive, Mimir, for knowledge on Kratos and Boy's journey. Thankfully, he doesn't give us away, so when Baldur and his lackeys leave, we're properly introduced to Mimir.
He doesn't know what you are.
And I would keep it that way. Who are you?
Me? I'm the greatest ambassador to the gods, the giants, and all the creatures of the 9 realms. I know every corner of these lands, every language spoken, every war waged, every deal struck. They call me Mimir! Smartest man alive. And I have the answer to your every question.
Why does the son of Odin hunt us?
Okay, there are a few gaps in my knowledge.
As mentioned before, Mimir is the smartest man alive, being imprisoned in a tree by Odin, who was tortured by him constantly in new ways every day. Mimir also tells us that this mountain isn't the highest peak in all the realms, so in order to fulfill Faye's last request, Kratos and Boy have to travel to Jötunheim, the home of the giants. Mimir accompanies us from this point forward after he tells us to cut off his head and take him to Freya to revive him. Before we do though, Mimir warns Kratos that the more he waits to tell Boy of his godhood, the more it'll end up hurting him.
The longer you wait to tell him his true nature, the more damage you do. He will resent you, and you may lose him forever.
There's much about me I would not have him know.
So you value your privacy more than your son?
I'm going to cut off your head now.
Fair enough.
Once we revive Mimir at Freya's, we learn that she and Mimir have some bad blood between each other, and Freya is actually a goddess. Not in the metaphorical sense, even though I'm just saying. I wonder what she's the goddess of. Damn, my joke was right on the money then. Now, Freya being a goddess also leads to Kratos not trusting her anymore, so we storm out of the hut and make our way back to the Lake of Nine. Side note, Freya gets a little shaken when she sees Boy's mistletoe arrows, immediately throwing them into the fire. I wonder if this will be followed up later. After we get a good look at Brock's tasty meat, Mimir communicates with the world serpent in its native tongue, and it helps out by pushing the bridge in the right direction to retrieve tools vital to reaching Jötunheim. I like Mimir. He's funny. His dynamic with Kratos and Boy is really nice to watch, and the performance by Alistair Duncan is top notch. All the performances are, but Mimir really stands out. I think we can all agree on that. Not only is he funny, he's also really useful since he knows more about this strange world than Kratos and Boy do. On the boat ride north, Mimir reveals he used to work for Odin when Odin forced Freya into exile, which is why she utterly detests Mimir. Though this was all before he was imprisoned in a tree and tortured like Prometheus back in Greece. Afterward, we make it to the corpse of Thamor, a frost giant who froze everything around him when he collapsed. Shooting his jewelry with our electric arrows allow us to advance forward, and after a bit of climbing, we see our destination is trapped under a thick layer of ice, so Kratos devises a plan to break through it all. Some standout gameplay moments was where I had to break through walls of ice to free a cluster of enemies to advance forward, and this timed sand bowl challenge thing. I really don't have much to say for this mission, minus everything that happens toward the end. See, while we search for the Chisel, a couple of Thor's sons, Magni and Modi, are in pursuit of us. We've seen them before, with them accompanying Baldur when he was interrogating Mimir. Before acquiring the Chisel, they ambush us and we have a double boss fight to do. During the boss, they'll try to rile Boy up, and the most effective insults are against Faye. By the time the boss is over, we've killed Magni. Wow, only halfway in and we've only killed our first god? What a shame. And yes, I did say first god. As Modi retreats, I start to wonder where I've heard his voice before. I go on behind the voice actors to get jump scared by John Uncharted, and Boy's sickness returns with him coughing up blood. It just gets worse when we go back to Tyr's temple. After Boy tries to teach Kratos how to read runes, Modi comes back for revenge, restraining Kratos and knocking down Boy. Okay, sorry, I can't keep this bit up. This scene is just really emotional, so I'm temporarily switching back to Atreus. To my surprise, Atreus seems to use Spartan Rage before falling unconscious, and this gives Kratos enough rage to become more immune to Modi's attack. After Modi runs away, Kratos has no other option than to ask Freya for help. Now, there's very few scenes in media that I consider to be my all-time favorite. I've already discussed one before, that being the climax for Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. The beginning of the sickness mission is probably the most emotional scene in the game thus far, and okay, I'll admit it, when I replayed this, I got a little choked up. Even if you haven't played the predecessors, this scene is beautiful, plain and simple. So let's discuss! Before getting to Freya's, the atmosphere is appropriately gloomy, with the sky being all stormy and specks of ash in the air. Freya refuses to open the door, but when she hears Atreus is sick, she's quick to help out. In order to ward away the sickness, Kratos needs to go to Helheim in search of the Gatekeeper's heart. Helheim is Midgard's underworld, a cold and bitter realm of the dead. The Leviathan axe would be useless in this mission. Kratos would need to get a weapon of fire. Kratos would need to go home and unearth a past he tried so hard to bury. Freya assures him that his past isn't who he is, and what matters most is saving Atreus' life.
Then I must return home. past I swore would stay buried.
Who you were before doesn't matter. This boy is not your past, he is your son. And he needs his father.
On the boat ride home, the atmosphere continues to stay glum and desperate, and it helps that Mimir isn't talking all too much, with his lines still fitting the direness of the situation.
Helheim of all places. You all right, brother?
I will do what I must. Leave me be.
As Kratos rides home to dig up his past, he gets a vision of a familiar face. Athena. Athena's been a massively important part of the saga, with her relevance continuing after her death. Here she's a reminder of Kratos' vengeful, bloodshed past. And on top of that, it's the most Greek fan service we've seen thus far, and it only gets better from here. After fighting a group of Frostdraugr with our bare hands, we finally made it home. Kratos opens up the basement and takes out the Blades of Chaos, the same weapons crafted by Ares to turn Kratos into the perfect warrior, and the same weapons used to kill countless lives in the name of vengeance and rage. These weapons must now be used for a noble cause, saving Atreus. Kratos' body language conveys just how hard this is for him to do. The way his hands shake after he reveals the blades, how he touches the bandages that hid his scorch marks, and the way he slowly wraps the chains back onto his arms. It's all so perfect. And really, I can't put into words how much I love this exchange between Athena and Kratos.
There's nowhere you can hide, Spartan. Put as much distance between you and the truth as you want. It changes nothing. Pretend to be everything you are not. Teacher, husband, father. But there is one unavoidable truth you will never escape. You cannot change. You will always be a monster.
I know. But I am your monster no longer.
Gameplay-wise, it feels so good to have these back. They're quick and fun to mess around with, just like the good old days. A series staple is using a special weapon or ability to burn down Bramble, and the Blades of Chaos fit the role of Bramble Burner perfectly. They even added some more elements to it by adding the Winds of Hell puzzles to it, where you can chuck your blades at specific targets and transport winds to open specific doors within a 10-second window. By this point in the game, you probably already finished upgrading the axe and the skill tree, so having the blades to level up in a tree of its own is perfect. Some runic attacks and unlockable moves even reference previous moves like the Icarus Storm, with it even mimicking the God of War 1 animation for it. Now that that's done, we make our way to Helheim. Here we learn a little more about the world thanks to Mimir. Helheim is just regular hell, where normal people go to die from old age, sickness, etc. And Valhalla is Hell Premium, where warriors go to die. In the story, the Valkyries are corrupted by Odin, so they're unavailable to keep Hell in shape, making it disorganized and full. A sealed-off area tortures souls by making them relive their past, and a glimpse into the fog gives Kratos a vision of our old buddy Zeus. This makes Mimir realize just who's been carrying his head all this time.
I'm dangling from the hip of the bloody ghost of Sparta!
Do not call me that.
Oh, don't mistake me, brother. From what I heard, the Pantheon had it coming.
After defeating the Bridgekeeper, we retrieve his heart and travel back to Freya's, reviving Atreus. Freya may have delayed the sickness, but Kratos is the only one who can truly cure it. And he does so by finally coming clean.
You do not know everything, boy.
No. But at least I know the truth now.
The truth. The truth. I am a god, boy. From another land far from here. When I came to these shores, I chose to live as a man. But the truth is, I was born a god. And so were you.
This detour served as a way for Kratos to be more honest to his son, and as a result they're closer than ever before. Now that Atreus knows he's a god, his sickness is long gone. It's also really cute that the first thing he questions is if he can turn into an animal, and Mimir says it might be a possibility with how different each god is from each other.
Boy, have you nothing to say?
Can I turn into an animal?
Can you turn into an animal?
Okay, let's call him Boy again. Now, unfortunately, Boy's developed a sort of superiority complex after learning of his godhood, and yeah, this is probably the only gripe I have with the story, sorry. It kinda sucks that this is after the best scene in the entire game, too. Before the sickness, he had a sense of childlike innocence to him, but the stuff he says now is a little alarming.
Hey, we don't have to go right back to Tyr's vault, do we? I mean, we're God. We can do whatever we want, right? What do you really feel like doing?
But who's worthy enough to judge?
Quiet, head. We are. We know better.
And believe me, it only gets worse from here.
But we're gods. We can do whatever we want. Let me guess. Your brother isn't as talented as you, and his work is junk.
Those things are accurate. Your point?
It's all you ever talk about, over and over. Do something about it or shut up already.
I see.
Yeah! We're sick of hearing about little people's little problems!
Like, he's basically just saying, oh, I'm a god? Cool. Hey, Sindri, kill yourself! Apparently there was a section of the game that was cut that would have made his, corruption arc more gradual, and yeah, it definitely feels like something's missing here. If the game had a bigger budget to work with and more development time, who knows? Maybe the story would have slightly benefited, but, you know, obviously this is not a big issue. I definitely could see someone defending it with, oh, he's just a kid and kids are stupid. And yeah, I would agree, because kids are stupid. Complaints aside, the trio were on their way to Tyr's temple to retrieve the black rune of Jötunheim. We already got a bit of this when we met Freya, but Tyr proves that not all gods are selfish monsters. Tyr was the Norse god of war, but he used his divine powers to stop wars rather than start them, which is a huge contrast from the Greek god of war. The temple is full of treasures Tyr collected from all over the globe, and he wished to share knowledge with the world, but while Tyr wanted to share knowledge, Odin wanted to hoard it for himself. Tyr worked together with the giants of Jötunheim to hide the travel rune from Odin in the vault before disappearing. As mentioned before, the vault is full of trinkets Tyr collected from around the world. We see stuff from China, Egypt, even Greece. Kratos picks up a bottle of wine that reminds him of his homeland, and he sees a vase with a painting of the ghost of Sparta.
Ah, a ski and do from my homeland. Used to have one of my own back in the day. You should take it, boy.
Yes, boy, take it. We might need to butter bread somewhere in our travels.
This is why no one likes you.
That was kind of funny.
After some more interesting puzzles, we finally retrieve the black rune of Jötunheim before we engage in a dual troll fight, with one being a frost troll and the other being a fire troll, so we gotta alternate between the axe and blades. Afterward, we get a moment of Kratos and Boy bonding. Then, he asks this.
Father, why did you leave your home and come here? Does it have to do with the other gods there? It's just, you hate the gods so much. But Tyr proves that gods can be good. And you're good. You only killed those deserving, right?
Boy is starting to let his godhood get to his head, but he doesn't know the half of it. Kratos may have saved him by telling him he's a god, but he still needs to be open about his past if he wants the boy to truly be better. Things are starting to really get worse when we make our way back to the summit. Now Boy is disobeying Kratos, charging at enemies before Kratos attacks, even shit-talking Sindri, telling him that his problems don't fucking matter. Somewhere inside the mountain, we meet up with Modi again, who got his ass handed to him by Thor when he heard what happened to Magni. All it takes is just one more distasteful comment about Faye for Boy to fucking stab Modi in the neck.
This is a much better knife than Mother's.
Kratos tries to lecture him that there's consequences to killing a god, but this just leads to more bad blood between father and son. I'm getting fucking sick of this kid. Congratulations, I'm not gonna call you boy anymore, I'm gonna call you brat of war. Eventually the fucking god of war and the fucking brat of war free a new elevator by burning Bramble, and we make our way back to the summit, opening the gateway to Jötunheim. Damn, this view sure is something. It really makes you feel invulnerable to all threats, physical or magical. Either that or Baldur's back.
Brother, look out!
Miss me.
The tension in this scene is off the charts. Kratos and Boy aren't working together. Baldur says he needed the boy all along. The gateway is destroyed. Kratos gets shot with an arrow. Baldur stabs Boy, and we jump over the edge to throw down with Baldur on top of a fucking dragon. I don't know if I mentioned it earlier. I mean, do you really expect me to reread all this bullshit? But each set piece is just so amazing and breathtaking. Grandiose set pieces are in the franchise's DNA, and I'm so glad we still have epic moments like this in 2018. The fight finishes when it takes us to the realm travel gate, and in the midst of all the chaos, Kratos prevents Baldur from traveling to Asgard by shifting the gate to Helheim instead, making the three of them crash land in the frosty wasteland. After Kratos chews the brat out, we get ready to escape back to Midgard. This area of Helheim was what Mimir warned Kratos about during his original visit, the region that tortures the inhabitants with visions of the past. Boy gets regretful when he sees a flashback to him stabbing Modi. We eventually catch up with Baldur, and we finally understand more about him. His mother was none other than Freya, and she's the one who granted him invincibility, but he drove mad due to his powers working against pleasure like food or women. Anyway, we make it to a boat we can use to get back to the realm travel gate, making it float in the sky after a clever bramble puzzle. After another set piece and enemy cluster, we get another flashback of the past, and it's the one that's the most significant. Kratos sees a flashback of his battle against Zeus at the end of God of War 3. The camera even shifts to young Kratos' POV, mirroring that one QTE I praised in the last video. Atreus watches in confusion, but he seems to be more concerned for his father's safety. I guess it took getting stabbed and teleported to another realm at light speed to set him straight, huh? Anyway, the ship crashes into a statue, forcing them into a secret chamber of Odin. Inside the chamber, we find a missing panel from one of those wooden lore cabinet things, and that symbol looks oddly familiar. This panel explains that Tyr hid the entrance to Jötunheim in a secret realm. Kratos points out that Tyr's eyes are jewels like Mimir's, signifying the gift of sight by the giants. Mimir's eye reveals a hidden detail in the panel, revealing a path that Tyr was on. Our next stop is back to Midgard to build the bridge gateway to Jötunheim. On our way there, we get some more moments of Kratos trying to explain what that vision with Zeus was, and Boy is being polite pretending he didn't see anything. Back in Midgard, Brock and Sindri are on good terms again. They work together to craft the Jötunheim temple for the table, but that's still not enough to make it to our destination. We still need the travel stone since all the realms have one in the realm travel room. Tyr hid it in a secret room in his temple, and after we go inside it, we solve a few deadly puzzles until we make it directly below the realm travel room with stones on the ceiling instead of the floor. Lifting the exterior reveals that it's restrained by 2 chains, and Kratos concludes that the stone will be achieved by flipping the temple. After more enemy gauntlets and death traps, we let the chains loose and flip the room, and lo and behold, climbing inside it grants us the Unity Stone. So we got the little replica of the temple used for the table and the Unity Stone, but we still need to access the Jötunheim tower itself. The panel of Tyr showed him walking on an invisible path over the edge of a cliff. Thankfully, now that we have the stone, we can go to the realm between realms and God of War 1 suicide dive to a hidden path where the Jötunheim tower is right there. Once we're in the temple, we place the stone on an altar, opening up a new challenge for us. Waves of enemies come in to brawl, with each wave coming from a different realm. Midgard, Alfheim, Helheim, even ones not in the main story like Muspelheim. After that's done, we're back in Midgard with the tower restored. All that's left is the eyes of a giant, so we need to locate Mimir's missing eye. Brock and Sindri reveal that they were tasked to hide it in the statue of Thor, which was eaten by the world serpent earlier. So after talking to it again, it lets us boat inside its belly to find the eye. The stomach is full of debris, stomach acid, and rotting clusters of gray stuff. This area kind of gives me Resident Evil 2 Remake sewer vibes. Anyway, now that the eye is retrieved, the most insane shit happens. As we boat out, the serpent is being attacked by something. We don't know what it is until the serpent spits us out up north in front of Thamor's corpse. A lot of shit has been revealed since we last met Freya, so when she arrives to the scene, Kratos and Boy don't know if they can truly trust her anymore. Man, this scene is tense. It really makes me feel invulnerable to all threats, physical or magical. Either that or Baldur's gonna emerge from the water like a creature from the Black Lagoon. Before the final boss, Baldur is reunited with his mother, Freya. Even if Freya tries to reason with him, he still feels
How I feel? How I feel?
resentment towards her for ruining his life with the invulnerability spell, seeking out vengeance. But Kratos knows this all too well. Vengeance only ever results in tragedy, and he tries to convince Baldur to not take this path.
This path you walk, vengeance, you will find no peace. I know.
But, of course, Baldur doesn't listen, and we start the final boss. In the original fight with him, it was just Kratos versus Baldur outside the house, but now Boy helps us as we fight Baldur, and Freya tries her hardest to de-escalate the situation. But Kratos, Boy, and Mimir are just super insistent on absolutely killing Baldur, which is just the funniest thing in the world to me.
He's more than harmed. The spell is broken.
He can be killed.
I'm certain of it.
But jokes aside, I really do love the narrative themes of this boss. We're not fighting some evil, unredeemable monster like Zeus. We're essentially forced to put down a rabid dog. This is perfectly conveyed in Baldur's theme song, Deliverance, which is one of my favorite tracks in the game. It's an absolute banger, being a blend of rage, tragedy, and invulnerable to all threats physical. If you're tired of me calling him Boy, good news, this was the moment he finally becomes Atreus. As Kratos is restrained, Atreus jumps into action defending his father. One devastating punch later, Atreus is covered in blood. But it's not his blood. The arrow holding Atreus' tunic was a mistletoe arrow that Freya didn't destroy, and it turns out to be Baldur's one weakness. Now that his powers are gone, we can finally do some actual damage to him. Even he's on board with him getting the fuck beaten out of him, which is also the funniest thing in the world to me. In a final effort to stop the fighting, Freya controls the corpse of Thamor like a puppet, occasionally intervening and changing the scenery. Like some of the enemies and bosses, Baldur starts to alternate between frost and flame powers, so we have to alternate between weapons so we can do some real damage to him. To put a stop to zombie Thamor, Atreus uses a little bit of world serpent tongue to signal it over and take him down. We get some standout moments like Baldur and Kratos trying to fight while they tumble over the edge, Atreus shooting him in midair not once but 5 times, interesting gimmicks, spectacle, close range combat, QTEs, comedy, and tension. This shit is peak God of War, and the ending is just as amazing as the final boss. Baldur's been given one too many chances, but he still wants vengeance. It's at this point where Kratos takes matters into his own hands.
I love you.
Why do you even care? You could have walked away.
The cycle ends here. Must be better than this.
Now that Baldur's dead, the cycle of vengeance repeats itself as Freya's now the one who seeks it against Kratos and Atreus. After Kratos revealed that he killed his father, Atreus asks if this is all what being a god is, a vicious cycle of revenge and sorrow. But Kratos comforts him, saying that they don't have to be how the other gods were and they can tread their own path, one that doesn't involve so much needless bloodshed. With Baldur dead, we're now finally free to travel to Jötunheim to scatter Faye's ashes. When we finally make it, Mimir stays behind to not ruin the moment. Jötunheim is completely empty, with no items to pick up, no enemies to kill, nothing. Just the yellow sky above all these mountains and dead giants. Now that Kratos has nothing to hide from Atreus, he lets go of the bandages, and they make it to the highest peak in all the realms, scattering Faye's ashes together as father and son. While we walk back home, we get treated with the end credits. Oh, but we aren't done yet. In Jötunheim, there's a picture of Faye arguing with giants, and some of the journey that we just went through is also pictured. Faye seemingly went through the entire journey before us, going through everything we've overcame. It all makes sense now. Faye was a giant. That's why Baldur knocked on our door in the first place, because Odin's vendetta against the giants. We also see that the prophecies had another name for Atreus. A name that Faye wanted to call him when he was born. Loki. In Norse mythology, Loki's the one to kill Baldur with a mistletoe arrow, causing the cataclysmic event of Ragnarok. And when we finally make it home, we get the biggest teaser of them all. Thor, the god of thunder.
What was that?
Your ball!
What else is left to say about God of War? It's a modern day classic, still resonating with a lot of people years later. It's one of the best and most popular games of all time for a good reason. It tells the story of a broken man learning how to be human again with the help of his son. The narrative did so much to the franchise, being a fantastic continuation to the Greek predecessors, while also being a breath of fresh air both story-wise and location-wise. I'm not saying this game is better, you know me, I'm completely biased towards the Greek saga personally, but these two eras complement each other in my eyes. The Greek games are improved knowing that there's more to this story, and the Norse games are improved if you know all the shit that happened beforehand. Back to the game though, it's also a blast to play through. It's replayable as hell with it having a New Game Plus feature, which I think more games can benefit from. The combat, overworld travel, boss fights, and spectacle are massively retooled and redefined, but it works so well and it's all still God of War at the core while still being massively different. The presentation is still beautiful, with it having its own Nordic aesthetic ingrained in each colorful and unique location. All in all, it's really hard to find anything actually wrong with God of War 2018, except for that stupid bullshit with Atreus after the sickness mission. But it's a must play for anyone who loves video games, great storytelling, and anyone who strives to be better. Now, normally, at this point the video would be over. I'd probably make a joke or two, and I'd play my outro. But here, I'd like to do something a little different. See, I talk about a lot of stuff on this channel. Some good, some bad, but God of War is special. This game is what made me want to do YouTube in the first place. Now, to say my old videos were rough around the edges is well, it's a massive understatement. I think my old videos are straight up bad. I really thought I was being quirky with having my whole gimmick be muted colors and a VHS effect. Eventually I dropped that shit, but you can still see a remnant of that in my current animation style. I guess what I'm trying to say is I got better at all of this over time, and it helps that I just got lucky and sucked the algorithm's cock, which landed me to where I am now. I'm glad I got to be as big as I am. I'm glad I finally got to talk about the game that made me pursue such an awesome hobby. I'd like to close this video by saying thank you. Thank you to Corey Balrog, Chris Judge, Sunny Suljic, Yumi Yang, Bear McCreary, and all the others over at Sony Santa Monica for making this game possible. I guess I should thank that little turd on the sidewalk too. Thanks David Jaffe. I'd also like to thank my friends who helped me put this all together, especially my boyfriend Hapix. He's the best person in the world, and I think I'd be completely lost without him. He's kind of the brains behind this whole operation, so to speak. And I don't really do this often, but I want to thank all of you too. Thank you for giving my content a chance. Thanks for subbing, thanks for all these wonderful comments. I don't say it much in my videos, but I appreciate you all. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to do more videos. We may be finished with God of War 4, but now we have one more game left. And it's the only one that I haven't played yet. Though it's a shame that Baldur's not going to be in it. He's the greatest character in all of fiction.
And here I thought my family was fucked up.
I love how he's supposed to be a mirror to what Kratos once was. I mean, I'd kill for an evil doppelganger who's essentially young me. Bravo. That's probably the stupidest speech I've ever heard. It's been a long time, but I finally found you. Wow, you look like shit. It almost looks like the artist didn't put any effort into drawing you. Who are you anyway? You don't remember me? I'm classic Lily Sona. You used to use me all the time until you decided to update all the dialogue sprites. I spent months rotting in hell, but I'm finally back to have my revenge. Wait a minute. Are you saying we're both the same person? Yeah, and?